My name is Tom Burns. I am with Quando Consultants. I am a rail program management uh, service lead, and I'm really excited to start this off. Introduce a couple fantastic speakers to you guys. I will give you their names and titles in order, and pretty much get out of the way and get them started. So we've got Rich Scott, for the Assistant Director of Public Projects with BNSF. Tim Brown, the grade crossing safety manager from the Ohio Rail Development Commission. Julie Witcher, the state rail safety engineer from the Minnesota DOT. And Jason Mobley, the state railroad crossing engineer from Georgia DOT. And as I noted, that's probably the order we're going to go in. And we will do questions at the end. We will open the floor up so people can open their mic and do all that kind of thing. But also, as the presentations are going on, feel free to put them in the chat as you think of them. We will also be collecting them. Daniel and I will be collecting them as it goes on, to make certain that we get to everybody's questions at the end. So with that, I will turn it over to Rich, and excited to listen to this. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. So I'll start here just laying some groundwork around common crossing challenges from a railroad perspective before the DOT panelists delve into their specific state programs and approaches for how to meet and mitigate these challenges here. Ooh, got ahead of myself. Quick overview of the BNSF Public Projects team. So as Tom introduced, I'm Rich Scott, Assistant Director of Public Projects with BNSF Railway. Been in the role about 4 years now out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. This is the rest of the team, who we are, how we're organized, how you can get a hold of us, because all of what we'll talk about today starts with knowing and working with your railroad public projects manager. So our team is organized by state at BNSF. So each state DOT and every other agency or project proponent in the state has a dedicated internal point of contact to coordinate projects with. So supporting the team is myself on the north half of our system and my counterpart, Cheryl Townlin, on the south half. Orienting to the scale and number of crossings we contend with at BNSF, we have over 29,000 crossings on our system, with about 25,000 of those being at grade, both public and private crossings. That's across a 32,500 route mile network in 5,000 plus communities. So one note here, we are celebrating our 7,000th fewer at-grade crossings than we had 25 years ago, just continuing our push to close and consolidate redundant crossings on our system through conversations like this. But gosh, do we have a long way to go here. These are the headwinds we face just day to day with at-grade crossings that remain. So dialing into the data we do have, we know driver behavior and distracted driving remain key challenges. That's drivers going around the gates or on their cell phones, issues that many of us on the call today are probably all too familiar with in trying to solve for incidents at certain crossing locations. So it's become clear that
It looks like these slides weren't updating for on the shared part.
So yeah, as I was going on about just dialing into some of the data that we have at BNSF, we know driver behavior and distracted driving is a problem. We know it's become clear that throwing up lights and gates doesn't solve the issue alone. When the data shows that over 60% of crossings, 60% of incidents at crossings are still occurring where you have that active warning. So how can we be more creative, and what are the next steps or step level improvements to reduce and mitigate conflicts? Medians, for example, help combat drivers going around the gates. We know bollards between tracks have helped keep people from turning down the track at those challenging intersections. Our DOTs and road authorities revisiting those locations to continue to improve and prevent incidents. So until we're able to solve for that and figure out how to enable drivers to make better decisions, we may continue to find ourselves on that plateau of incident reduction. And hopefully the slide updated there. Just checking.
Looks good.
All right. But where is the most need? So as I mentioned, we've got 25,000 at-grade crossings on BNSF in 5,000 plus communities. Where can our collective dollars go and to what projects to get the most out of our incident reduction by total numbers in each state and by frequency per million BNSF train miles. So you can see the plateau there that I had talked about and somewhat trend in the wrong direction here. Uh, how does each state BNSF operates in here reach that milestone goal of less than one incident per million train miles on that track to zero incidents? How are states using data effectively to pinpoint where partnership can go the furthest? Most states have a robust Vision Zero or Safe Systems Approach initiative. We've heard before for roadway corridors and projects. Does that, as it should, extend to reducing incidents at those intersections where the road crosses the rail? And what about the data that is not shown or is missing? Do state and local programs have the right overlap and proactive level planning effort to understand unique grade crossing challenges beyond what the FRA, the FHWA, or other dashboards say could spit out? So quick case study here. This is a complex crossing in Oklahoma City, roughly 20 trains a day, max train speed 55 miles per hour. Some of us are probably already thinking we would go out of our way to avoid this crossing. If you look at the FRA inventory, though, this crossing would hardly register as a location of concern. So the daily traffic is far underreported with a count from 1988. There hasn't been an at-grade crossing incident here in the last 5 years, but there have still been 58 railroad service interruptions at this crossing due to vehicle conflicts. That's people rear-ending or sideswiping each other, turning the wrong way onto the tracks, not paying attention. Of course, no trains were involved in these incidents, but they had to stop to allow for investigations, emergency vehicles, again, 58 times in the past 5 years. And during those times, that's the full length of the train occupying other crossings in this corridor. So how do we better capture and overlay incident details like that to look at multimodal conflict mitigation, move away from the siloed individual projects and take a more holistic, broader look at the corridor, root cause analysis, and why trains are stopping, what needs to be solved from that dual railroad perspective. So I'll flip through the photos here. Another case study in Alliance, Texas, where the community is growing and developing in historically a railroad industrialized corridor. So as I click through, you can start to see the good old suburban neighborhoods forming with shopping centers and other services. It's a rapid growing area in North Texas here. There may be limited data indicating any of the crossings around here would have potential for incident or that existing crossing measures are not enough. But an in-tune DOT and community knows there would be emerging risk factors and engages with the railroad and developers on solutions to preemptively prevent incidents as the community grows through here. So this is what BNSF sees as one of our key collective challenges and why we are seeing a rise in incidents and other crossing pain points. So with urban sprawl and incompatible land use mix next to established rail corridors and crossings, it's creating new conflict and incident locations. Schools are maybe the prime example here. So the cheapest land around is most often these industrial areas. So school districts on a budget are now too often selecting sites adjacent to rail corridors to build on. And you can imagine the pain of just regular afternoon pickup or morning drop off, and then you had a train in the mix. It adds layers of frustration for parents. So it's a message of more public agencies, policymakers, and urban planners needing to be on the lookout for leading indicators like this. Where are conflict points emerging? How can they be avoided? as much as the lagging indicators we looked at in that actual incident data. So closing out this North Texas example, as the area has continued to develop and through partnerships, we've grown with the DOT, with local community leaders. We have projects in the works to now alleviate the challenges through crossing consolidation, through grade separation, before this area becomes even more congested. Finding better ways to coexist together, that's our mission. But this is just one community now. How many other developments are popping up under the radar adjacent to, again, those 25,000 crossings in 5,000 plus communities on our system? It's overwhelming to think about here. So rather than eat the whole elephant at once, at BNSF, we started breaking it down this year into smaller parts and pieces and have been highlighting and putting some focus on a new theme each month here. That long list of projects on all of our plates, each month is an opportunity to focus in a bit more on projects relevant to the theme here and give them renewed attention and double down on progress while thinking proactively for new opportunities, new projects that could be implemented. So this way, it's helped us make sure we are taking a well-rounded look at the mix of incident factors and how each theme could be adopted into a state rail plan, say. So trespassing and vandalism might be front and center in California and Washington, for example. We want to make sure we don't forget to look for those kind of mitigation projects, those opportunities in, say, North Dakota and Iowa as well. So this approach has helped to spotlight some of those formerly less explored areas in certain states and align better with FRA focus areas across our entire system. So wanting our state DOT partners on track in that sort of advanced planning effort, we launched what we call the BNSF Tracking to Zero award last year to recognize those states with less than one grade crossing incident per million BNSF train miles in the state. So in year two now, Illinois and Wisconsin notched their first awards this past summer. And just to round out the presentation, the goal of this award program is to start conversations like this for how each of our state partners can reduce incidents by adopting best practices from other states, looking for project partnerships, and overall taking a proactive approach to reaching and maintaining a low number of crossing incidents in their state. So we want to help drive and build sustainable safety incident reduction programs, both in how we support each DOT and with what those future-facing state rail plans look like. So I think we can all be more conscious of both those leading and lagging indicators, as I presented on, if we're to get out ahead of reducing incidents. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Tom.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Rich. We really appreciate that overview from BNSF. And I think next up we will have Tim Brown from the Ohio Rail Development Commission.
Good afternoon. That was a very good presentation. Thanks to Rich for that. So I'll go into my slides here. Confirm that I have everything shared first.
Looking good. Just got to get in presentation mode. Perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about really just a few case studies here in Ohio for really the subject of this webinar, high incident grade crossings. So high incident grade crossings are crossings that we regularly review. So what do we mean by high incident grade crossings? At least for our purposes, we're looking at crossings that already have lights and gates. Like Rich said, that's where Ohio sees most of our incidents as well. And our kind of screening definition is crossing with more than one incident in the past 5 years. So it could be non-injury, injury, and or fatal, as well as crossings that have had a fatal incident. It could be multiple in some cases, just one. So two recent examples I'm going to go over. One is in the city of Cleveland, Bessemer Avenue. The other is McCracken Road, which is in the city of Garfield Heights. So we'll start with Bessemer Avenue. So this is back in 2016. This was kind of our, I would say, first year of having this kind of concerted effort to looking at high incident crossings in a systemic way. So back in 2016, Bessemer Avenue was the essentially the most hazardous crossing in Ohio, if you want to put it that way. Highest predicted accidents in Ohio out of 5,700 crossings. That kind of previous period there, about 5 years, 6 years, there were 7 incidents. So just some, I guess, basic orientation. I'm down here in Columbus. This is Cleveland, Lake Erie. And this is Norfolk Southern. This is the then Capital Limited, now Floridian route. And this is a major kind of high density corridor for Norfolk Southern. There are a few intermodal terminals along the route, kind of connecting the East Coast ports with Chicago. So a little closer, zoom in to the crossing we're talking about. So this is in the city of Cleveland. A lot of adjacent industrial uses, heavy industrial. Um, uh, Norfolk Southern's operations, about 50 trains a day, with two Amtrak trains a day. In Ohio, they mostly operate at night. Um, Now, roadway geometrics, it's kind of hard to tell here. It looks a little gentler than it actually is, but the crossing is in a reverse curve, bisected by the railroad tracks. And there's just a lot going on in the area. There's overhead high voltage lines, um, uh, decent amount of truck traffic, and really just kind of setting the stage. So the accident history, and then this is a kind of a better view of the kind of reverse curve that we're talking about. So the accident history really ranged from your uh, really range of issues. When you see the reverse curve, there were incidents that involved vehicles running off the road because of the reverse curve. Incidents of people abandoning their vehicle on the tracks based on the police reports. Um, at least one rear end collision. So really just kind of a range of incidents. So the clearest approach from the initial diagnostic survey was to enhance the visibility of the crossing as much as possible. The before photo, you'll see, I think, a single cantilever on the far side, I believe. But our upgrade project was really, we're going to light this crossing up, to to put it mildly. So we have two cantilever assemblies on the left-hand side, in addition to our mass-mounted assemblies, to really increase the visibility of the crossing. And there were recommendations made to the city, the local highway authority, City of Cleveland, to you can kind of see here, you don't really see very much striping, but they did come back after our project was done and refresh the striping to kind of let everyone know, yeah, you're in a curve. And of course, a LED upgrade. So understanding that it was number one on the list, and that it had actually been highlighted by FRA. That was around the time when they sent a letter to every state that had a top 10 crossing, and by good fortune or I guess just foresight, our project was already well underway when we got that letter. So we, the key is that we didn't really want to leave it there, understanding that it was number one. So we undertook a feasibility study, 2019, 2020, and really the purpose was a kind of conceptual overview of the feasible alternatives. So could be grade separation, could be roadway realignment, finding out a way to address that reverse curve. Now, at least in 2020 dollars, we had an estimated cost of, on the low end, for about $2 million if it was just roadway realignment, up to $15 million, with a full kind of roadway over grade separation. Now, the big caveat was that there were significant uncertainty related to utility relocation. I'll go back here with the slide, and you can't really see it in this view very easily, but we do have some high voltage lines that also run parallel to NS right of way. And those would likely need to be relocated or raised. And at least at our study level, that was a significant unknown. The other issue is that all the alternatives, because of the heavy industrial use and need to maintain property access, all of the alternatives involved maintaining an at-grade crossing. So um, that is kind of the segue into our kind of big takeaways, at least for the purposes of Bessemer Avenue. So crashes did continue following the upgrade in 2018, but there haven't been any since 2023. So that's good. The other is that the grade separation could provide safety benefits. You take a lot of the traffic away from that at-grade crossing. That's a good thing, but it wouldn't result in a crossing being eliminated. And at least as it stands now, kind of federal funding outlook, that's an important selection criteria for the primary discretionary grant program for grade separation projects. So that was really the big limitation of kind of the, I would say, final disposition, let's say, for that project. So I guess fast forward to 2022, and we're looking at another crossing. This one is McCracken Road, the city of Garfield Heights. This map may look pretty familiar, and that's because it's exactly the same, except the crossing is directly outside that Cleveland Intermodal facility that's operated by Norfolk Southern. So 5 incidents since 2020. Again, on the same intermodal corridor with the same Amtrak operations. The added complication is that it's not just Norfolk Southern. There is actually another railroad operating here. So we have our 2 Norfolk Southern tracks. We have the intermodal facility to the south, and then we have the Wheeling Lake Erie Railway, a Class 2 railroad in Ohio, operating on separate right of way, but under the same DOT number. So other challenges, and one of the reasons why we were there's a signalized intersection directly to the east, and we have about 800 feet of clear storage distance between the signalized intersection and the kind of first set of tracks, Wheeling tracks, and peak hours, traffic will queue all the way back and across the crossing. Now, in the other direction, we also have this asphalt plant and an aggregate terminal kind of to the north and south that are served by driveways on the west side of the crossing. And we have the same overhead high voltage lines that were Bessemer Avenue at this crossing. So little clearer view here. This was the other kind of major complication, is that we have trucks going westbound on McCracken Road, turning into this asphalt plant. And it may be a little hard to see from the street view here, but they're either faced with stopping on the Wheeling tracks, stopping on an 11% grade, or stopping on the Norfolk Southern tracks in order to turn left into the asphalt plant driveway. So as a result of our 2022 diagnostic survey, there was some further investigation that the team recommended. One, potentially to address that queuing that I mentioned from that signal to the east. Well, this warning devices aren't interconnected now. Maybe a preemption style project would help address that. Now, that still leaves this driveway. So what do we need to do there? Well, maybe a new signal at that driveway would help at least allow vehicles to clear the tracks, or even hold them short of the crossing if they're trying to turn left into that asphalt plant driveway. So 2025, we had traffic counts performed with some video documentation, and really what that effort did is just give us more evidence. So just some screenshots from the video. This is the queue formation from that signal at State Route 14. Backing up in this case, it's probably well more than 800 feet, probably more like 1,000. And then you can see here on this other image, I believe we have we actually have some troubleshooting of a down gate right here by railroad employees, but we also have trucks turning out of that driveway left, um, and then another truck that's approaching the crossing, waiting to turn left. So this is really what we're faced with. I mean, this is challenging from a design standpoint. So we have some conceptual designs worked up, but the potential challenge is that, I mean, we're the Rail Commission. We're an independent commission with the State Department of Transportation here in Ohio, and this is a locally maintained roadway. So we really a lot of this potential project, is predicated on getting that buy-in early. So that's one of our major next steps. Another is to work with both railroads to determine the feasibility of providing any advanced preemption time, if it's even possible. So major takeaways here. Like Rich said, I mean, grade separations can be a really good solution to these challenging issues. This has some similar challenges to Bessemer Avenue, significant unknowns with utility relocation costs. The grade kind of elevation, it's kind of hard to see from the imagery provided, but that would also be a major challenge. And similar to Bessemer Avenue, maintaining the adjacent property access. We have two heavy truck users who would still require property access, should a grade separation project be initiated. So eliminating that crossing may not be feasible here. So other engineering approaches, signal preemption, these based on our initial view at it, those could provide some important safety benefits, but there are some caveats. I mean, and the big one is that as the kind of Section 130 program for Ohio, we can cover design and construction costs, and that's really part of our role. But ultimately, getting that local buy-in, kind of meeting on where our safety priorities are with the local highway authority, and getting that project advanced, it absolutely needs local buy-in, because ultimately we're relying on our local highway authorities to maintain these interconnected signals, so they provide the safety benefits in the future. So that's my presentation, and yeah, happy to take any questions at the end.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. That is very appreciated. Fantastic presentation. I think with that, we will pass it over to Julie from Minnesota DOT, and she will take us into the next section. Julie, feel free to share your screen, and let's keep on going.
All right. Great. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. Getting into the meeting here. All right. Did it share my, no, it looks like it's sharing the wrong screen here. You can see the presenter.
If you go into display settings, you can switch it there. If you see that in the upper left-hand corner, you can switch it out. There should be a drop-down menu that comes out. Yep, there you go.
All right. Thank you. All right. Well, good afternoon. My name is Julie Witcher. I'm the State Rail Safety Engineer here in Minnesota. And I just wanted to point out the snow plows behind me here. Here in Minnesota, we like to name our snow plows. So the one you see behind me here is Clark W. Blizwart. So we've got some fun names, and it's a fun contest we like to run, and had a lot of snow in the last couple weeks here, so showing those off today. All right, so getting into my presentation. Minnesota is in a good place as far as number of incidents and number of fatalities and serious injuries. We've historically had low numbers. We've continued to drive them down year after year, but that makes it very difficult to then program new projects and identify where those risks lie. And so Minnesota has taken, I'll give you a little bit of an overview of our system here first. We have a little over 4,000 grade crossings, public at grade. A third of those have active warning devices, and those active warning devices cover over 85% of our trips and 60% of the trains crossing at active crossings. Our philosophy, however, is a proactive, systemic risk model. We do risk management beyond crash history. We approached our grade crossing as a statewide system. Just moving something here, sorry. And not a set of isolated projects. What we did here in the Rail Safety Office was modeled our program after the TZD program here in Minnesota and the traffic safety program, which is where I came from before I came to this office about 8 years ago. Minnesota was an early adopter of the TZD model towards zero deaths, and we leaned heavily into that by producing a study in, I think it was about 2016, that's developed this risk model I'm going to talk about. We programmed our first projects in 2018 using this method. And it's just about getting to the time where we can kind of start looking at the effect that this is having in our to our crash data. We focus here in Minnesota on our outcomes rather than reactive fixes, and that allows our funds to be deployed where future risk is the highest and not just where past crashes have happened. So we took a deep dive into our crash history, which we had to aggregate many, many years to get to something statistically significant and really come up with some trends. And these are the risk factors that came out of that study back in the mid 2015, 2016 era. You can see here we've got a list of risk factors that we ultimately settled on. Many of these are the same inputs into the US accident prediction model that was in use at the time of the study. But what is really unique to Minnesota here is down here in the bottom left, these surroundings, the risk factors corresponding to those. And the one that is new and unique to Minnesota, I feel, something that we weren't really expecting, is this distance to nearest crossing. We know about distance to nearest intersection because, you've got stacking and you just get difficulties when you have a intersection very close to the crossing. We know about that. But this distance to nearest crossing came up with between a half a mile and a mile. Folks who are local to an area and familiar with the roadway system and the crossings tend to race down to the next crossing when you have approximately that distance, and they feel like maybe they can't get to the next crossing, but maybe they can get down to 2 crossings before and try to race that train down there and not be stopped behind that train and waiting for that train to clear the tracks. And so that's was new to us at the time, and I feel is really unique to Minnesota, and that constitutes one of our risks. So when we are looking at programming projects, particularly we're evaluating passive crossings, we concentrate a lot of time and effort on screening passive crossings to be included in our Section 130 program. We use these risk factors to screen, and then we use a scoring system and diagnostics and field visits and engineering judgment to ultimately do the final programming. But we screen our system for all of these risks each year. We update our inventory on a 3-year basis, like most of us do. And so this data is constantly refreshed, and we have, depending on what of this data may change, if it's the AADT or a lot of times the train traffic will change. You can see that a lot of our risk factors are really tied to that volume and the volume cross product. So that can really make a huge change. Approaching and clearing sight distance also, if we should update that, and there's significant changes to that, those projects will, or those crossings will then pop up to being something that we need to investigate and look at further. If there's something that can be done with a low cost solution, we try to investigate that and get those deployed as soon as possible. Otherwise, we include these for consideration and programming into our Section 130 program. And another thing that we had to do when I first came to this office was set the program priorities. And based on this risk-based system, we put together a group of individuals from, I believe we had railroad representation, we had I think we had a township member, and just a kind of a smattering cross-section of our cohorts who were available to give us input and help us come up with these program priorities. So we do take a little bit off the top of our $6 million that we get annually in Section 130 funds for inventory, and we had a one-time expenditure for the statewide action plan. But then consolidation of crossings and crossing closures really is our number one priority. We have not really spent a lot of Section 130 funds on closures, simply because the nature of a closure moves faster than our programming does. So we need to program those projects up to 3 to 4 years in advance. And when the time is right for a crossing closure, we like to strike faster than that. So a lot of times we'll utilize some other discretionary funding that we have available, partnering with the railroads to make those closures happen. But we do still have it as one of our top priorities, and we're always working to find opportunities to close crossings. Then our other two are kind of the bread and butter of Section 130, antiquated equipment replacement and installing active warning devices at passive crossings. And so I just want to, like I said, we're kind of getting to the point where you can evaluate whether we're having an impact with this risk-based selection process. We started programming projects. I hope you can see my cursor here in the 2018 range. You can see things have been a little bumpy here with the incidents. We're coming back down, but our trend lines are still trending in the right direction for fatalities, serious injuries, incidents. I can kind of speculate, what's going on here, but I like to think that, we're coming in the right direction. These projects are finally being completed that maybe were programmed for with 2018 dollars, 2019. I like to think of this last section here as what we can look at for improvement numbers. We are reaching a point in our program where we feel that we have really kind of, I don't want to call it low-hanging fruit, because we worked really hard to select the crossings that we have been programming in the last 7 to 8 years with this risk-based system. But we are kind of getting to the end of the higher risk crossings that are easier to see that they're valuable projects, and reaching a tipping point with the crossings that have antiquated systems and are very expensive to replace as well. So our next wave, or the next thing that we're looking at to get to reducing incidents and fatal and serious injuries here in Minnesota, is leaning into the IIJA grants, the RCE grants, the Railroad Crossing Elimination Program. We have 2 grants that have been obligated by the FRA We have 2 corridors that we are looking at intensely between the Twin Cities and Duluth, and also from Duluth to Moorhead. So we have an east-west corridor and a north-south corridor that we are going to be investigating. And the Hinckley corridor, the north-south corridor, that study is underway. Our Moorhead to Duluth study was just obligated in the last week or so with the FRA. So we'll be hitting the ground running with that and using the same kind of model to develop that plan for that project. And what we're hoping to come out of those RC projects is a look at each crossing that is on those corridors and coming up with some alternatives, whether it be a conversion from passive to active, a closure, or a consolidation. So conversions, closures, and consolidations, that's what we're trending towards. And we are hoping to have then at the end of that study a list of capital improvement projects that we can move forward with another grant application when funding becomes available. So that's what we're looking to in the future, having success with our risk-based system so far. And those are the slides I have for you today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie. Really appreciate it. I think it's really interesting that you guys found out that the crossing distance was significant. So that's something hopefully we'll get some questions on later. With that, we'll move on to the last presentation we have from Jason. Last but certainly not least. Take it away, Jason.
All right, give me one moment. Are you guys seeing that?
Looks good.
All right, good deal. So good afternoon or good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Mobley. I'm the State Railroad Crossing Engineer for Georgia. Primarily, I manage the Section 130 program, but we also provide a variety of grade crossing support. Let's start out and give you a little bit of overview of Georgia. We have about 5,000 public at-grade crossings, and it's a fairly even split between CSX, Norfolk Southern, and our short lines. We have 2 ports, Savannah and Brunswick, on our coast that generate a lot of rail traffic that moves northward and westward toward Mobile or through Atlanta toward the rest of the country. So each one of these X's represents a crossing with more than one crash since 2020. If you notice it, and it kind of makes sense that most of those crashes happen around our metro Atlanta area. This area has about half the population of the state, and that's where most of the drivers are, and that's where most of the crashes are occurring. Over the past few years, we have in Georgia, we've shifted the focus of our Section 130 program to focus on these multi-crash crossings. Over the since 2020, we've had, and this is, I just pulled those numbers this week, so we've got 97 crossings that have had more than one crash since 2020, and that's about 46% of our crashes in that period. So if we can do something about these multi-crash crossings, we will be making some significant headway. Let's see. All right, did my slide advance for you guys?
Yep, look good.
All right, good deal. So I wanted to quickly share this. I attended AASHTO Court back in October, and I saw several versions of this graph from a nationwide perspective, and I just wanted to put this up here just to show that we're kind of in the same boat as most everybody else. These are all of Georgia's crashes since the 1970s, and you know there's a downward trend until around 2010, and then kind of a unfortunate upward trend starting around that time. And I always kind of amazed at how ours mimics the nationwide trend. So I just wanted to put this out there just to know that we are in the same boat almost everybody else is. I was glad to see Julie's downward trend continuing, and I'd like to see Georgia's start doing that again as well. So this is a list of at least a portion of a list of our multi-crash crossings. And we have a very, what I call, simple strategy. We want to either be taking some kind of action on these crossings or monitoring previous actions we've already taken. Our goal is to have an answer and a short-term or a long-term solution for each one of these crossings. The challenge is they're all unique and they all have a wide variety of root causes for the crashes. I've highlighted a few that are of particular interest, so I'm going to just spotlight those for you today. And for some of these, we have multiple actions in progress, and so we'll just go through those. This Sylvan Road crossing is located between an unsignalized intersection. I'm gonna try to use my laser pointer here. With short storage, and then I struggled to find a good photograph of this intersection to really depict it for you. But there's kind of a shadow here, and this is a state route, and it's signalized. What's a little bit difficult to see is there's a grade separated MARTA track. MARTA is our light rail here in Atlanta. There's a bridge here over this crossing, but we have multiple tracks. There's 3 tracks along Sylvan Road. The crossing surface is in poor condition due to the 3 tracks having different elevations, and drivers have to move slowly across the crossings. There's also a significant amount of queuing at the signal, and this intersection here is uncontrolled, so the drivers are trying to make left turns onto the state route, and with the delays, these drivers get very competitive. So it's a little bit challenging of a situation. We've had several past and current initiatives here. We held a diagnostic review in 2023 where we recommended updates to several of the flashing lights and to signing and marking. We have a project under construction now, which is upgrading the signal equipment. And we're also developing a project to reconstruct one of the tracks to bring it up to level with the other tracks so that drivers can have a easier time navigating across them. This next one is Angham Road, and this one has been one of the most challenging that I've seen. I've been in this position for about 4 years, and this crossing has been pretty much the number one crossing since I've been here. The root issue is drivers coming from the left side of the screen here. They actually turn onto the tracks thinking they are turning onto the next roadway. This happens especially at night. This just the geometry of the road and the way it looks, it makes you think that you can turn onto the tracks. I think GPS plays a part in this too when it's telling you to turn right, and drivers do that a little prematurely. So we have developed a delineator project, and it's already been constructed a few years ago. You can actually see the delineators on the sides that we put up to defer folks from turning onto the crossing. We also striped all the way through the crossing, and this actually worked for quite a while. There was a long period where there were no crashes, and then all of a sudden we started getting crashes again. And we found out that a truck and a horse trailer got stuck at the crossing for a different reason, and a train hit it, and it wiped out a lot of our delineators that we had put up. we worked with the local government to put the delineators back up. But we're getting reports from Norfolk Southern that they're still seeing some drivers turning onto the tracks. We worked with, I'm going to go ahead and advance the slide to show you a little bit of a zoomed out view of this area. Here's the crossing we were just talking about. We've worked with the city of Powder Springs and Cobb County and Norfolk Southern, and the city of Powder Springs has applied for a RCE grant and was awarded an RCE grant to eliminate this crossing. And the scope of the project is to eliminate the Ingham Road crossing, as well as the downstream crossing at Finch Road and the downstream crossing at Huddleston Drive, by building a connector road, and then also connecting Huddleston Drive to Sweetwater Avenue at US 278, and which has an existing grade separation. So that's the preliminary scope. The good news is this will eliminate these 3 crossings, which are all on our multi-crash list. So I'm very excited about this initiative, and we are participating as much as we can to help the team. And I'll move on to the next one. So Rugby Avenue is one where we noted crashes occurring within days of each other. We decided to investigate this one quickly because of the crashes occurring so rapidly. And from the initial reports, we felt that there was a problem with preemption somehow. So we coordinated a field test with CSX and the city. During the preemption, the simulation, we realized that the drivers, the westbound drivers that should be getting track clearance green were actually getting red. And they were being trapped on the crossing. And then the eastbound drivers, which should have been getting red, were getting green, inviting them onto the tracks. So the signal phases had gotten swapped somehow. And we stayed out there and got the signal crews to come and make the change that day while we were out there. And there have been no crashes since. And this is one that it just kind of really affected me as an engineer in my career, because I felt like we really saved lives that day by something simple, just taking action after seeing some trends and getting out there and finding a quick solution that was very effective, and just a very gratifying day in my career. I think about it a lot, and I know you guys, probably a lot of you have experienced something like that in your careers, or maybe more than that. So the next one is another one of our top concerns, Oak and Gloucester Road at CSX. The concern is not necessarily with the crossing itself, but it's the roadway geometry leading up to the crossing. So coming from the south, drivers have a long straightaway and they build up a good bit of speed, and usually are driving faster than the posted speed limit. And there's a sharp curve right before the crossing, and they usually misjudge this curve, and they either wipe out the railroad signal, or they land on the tracks and get stuck. And this is a pretty active line, so there's been numerous crashes here. Another contributing factor is that there's a large commercial driveway that's in the curve, and a lot of trucks use this, or they're in and out of all the time, so reducing the access is not very favorable at this location. We've worked with the county to implement several short-term improvements, such as adding chevrons, more enhanced warning signs, and speed control or speed warning signs that show the speed you're driving. But the long-term solution is eliminating the crossing. The county applied for and they won an RCE grant to do this, and they are currently scoping the solution right now. And our team is being involved. We're engaging with the county to keep up with the status of this project and to provide support where we can. this one, the main concern on Alberta Road originally was preemption time. In the worst case scenario, we calculated that a driver would not get enough track clearance green time to clear the tracks before the train arrived. So for short-term solutions, we worked with the field districts to adjust the signal timing and to allow more track clearance green time. Interestingly, during our efforts, we discovered that the existing stop bar location was placed incorrectly. The approved location was actually behind the tracks, but it had somehow moved when they were repaving or something or restriping. It was moved. So this is one thing we got corrected immediately, and there have been fewer crashes. We did note that even with the stop bar being moved back to the correct place, that this could still benefit some preemption upgrades. So we have a project with Norfolk Southern that's under construction now to do that. So this one is another interesting one, Rudell Road, because this one brought to our attention a short corridor with several crashes. The city of Vidalia and Lyons, they're adjacent to each other, and they're about halfway between Savannah and Macon, and so they're surrounded by a predominantly rural area, and this is a small little urban hub, and that services areas far outside their actual boundary. And Georgia Central Railroad runs parallel to US 280 between the two cities, and there are numerous at-grade crossings all along here. The primary cause of the crashes was not easily identifiable, but I believe it comes down to drivers not expecting a train, unfamiliar drivers and maybe infrequent trains, and the folks just not paying enough attention or having enough respect for the tracks. So we reviewed the corridor and completed a project to install multiple or upgrade multiple passive crossings to active crossings. And we also updated signing and marking throughout the corridor. On one particular location, we added, just by restriping, we added some more storage distance between the roadway and the crossing. Ironically, we were unable to improve the crossing that brought us here, Rudell Road, due to a conflict with a development. The good news is that the development, when it's done, it will be relocating Rudell Road. So we're continuing to monitor the progress of that development along with the results of our project. Our project is mostly complete, and so we are going to keep monitoring these locations. I've got just one more to highlight. This is Church Street. It's another interesting one because Norfolk Southern at one time told me that this was the #1 crossing in Georgia that they would like to eliminate. The crossing is located next to an unsignalized intersection, and it's sometimes difficult to pull out onto this road just due to the amount of traffic, and cars end up backing up and parking on the tracks. Aside from the crashes, there have been numerous near misses noted here. The solution for this one is going to be a closure. The county is actually doing their own project to improve operations in this area with the larger roadway, and there's a existing grade separation over Norfolk Southern, which the project will include a widening of this bridge and operational improvements. And with that project, they're going to be eliminating the Church Street crossing. So that's the end of my presentation. I have swapped out the usual questions slide so that I can unapologetically promote the upcoming National Grade Crossing Conference. Georgia is hosting in just 4 months from now at Georgia Tech in Atlanta. We'd love to see you all there. We've got a robust website, which is listed here for your reference. And you can find the agenda, the registration, hotel, everything you need to know there. We're also highlighting a lot of things you might want to do to visit Atlanta. when you're there, both before or after the conference. So we welcome you to come to Atlanta in April. One thing to note is that you can save $75 on your registration if you register before the end of the year. So we certainly hope everybody can be there. And that's the end of my slides. So I'll turn it back to Tom or Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Really appreciate that. And great, great plug for the National Rail Crossing Conference. I know a lot of people on this call are probably very interested in that, so appreciate making sure we have awareness of that. So with this, we will open the floor up to questions. Like I said, you can put them in the chat. You can just kind of unmute yourself if you want to go. And I'll give it a second, see if anybody has anything pressing that they want to start with.
Yeah, Percy Bannerman. I'm the crossing engineer for the state of Vermont. My question was for the first speaker, I believe that was Rick. The zero incident, the 1 million train miles, where there's a grant for having less than one per million miles. For the state of Vermont, it's very difficult for us to attain that, just because we only have about 575 miles that we are responsible for, and there's a few other private crossings. But is there a chance, or is there a way that we can qualify for a grant like that?
So BNSF does not operate in the state of Vermont, and it is not a grant. It is an award. It's a physical award, just commemorative, as you're on the right side of that 1.0 frequency. Really meant to just spur the conversation of what more can our state DOT partners do, future-facing state rail plans, all the things that Jason, Julie, Tom had talked about here, of really dialing into crossing treatments and the range of what is out there to correct poor driver behavior at those crossings.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Other questions?
Yes, one more question. For Julie, the volume cross product, how did you get that value on that chart that you showed in your presentation?
Sure, I'm just trying to turn my video on here. Maybe we're not going to have video. You don't need to see my face. The volume cross product and I've lost my screen now. But the numbers that we came up with for thresholds for the risks, whether it be the distances to the nearest crossing or the volume cross product, were from aggregating all that crash data and the incidents and all of that, and really trying to look for trends and seeing where we had anything kind of pop up. So it was really a statistical analysis of where crashes had happened and analyzing what that cross product was, and then kind of narrowing down what those thresholds should be.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that. Other questions that are out there? I've got one to fill the time while you think of things. And I think it's probably a short question for all three states, and then maybe a longer question to see how Rich and his team deal with it. Home rule and local control of crossings. What is the status of that in Ohio, Georgia, and Minnesota? Do they have home rule, or is it state controlled? And I'd be interested to hear, based on that, Rich, you've got a lot of experience across a number of states, what that changes with regards to some of these negotiations with local communities and versus the state, and how that kind of works.
Well, I can go first, Tom, about home rule. Ohio's home rule state. The State Department of Transportation manages and maintains state routes outside of municipalities. So state routes within municipalities, local roads, township roads, county roads, city roads, are generally under the exclusive, from a traffic control standpoint, of the local highway authority. So things like signage, striping, pavement condition, anything that's not the traffic control devices for the railroad crossing itself, is on the local highway authority. So, I mean, we have a lot of great partners across the state. Um, but it's a lot for locals to maintain. They have a lot of priorities themselves. Sometimes getting, the pavement markings at one of these high incident crossings right is not the top of their priority list. I mean, thinking about Jason's presentation, having the preemption program maybe switched, or not as designed. If that's not the state DOT, or even if it is the state DOT, you're relying on someone to maintain, um, part of the traffic control system at the railroad crossing. That's not the railroad, so that just adds a, whole another level of variability. So,
Yeah, Jason, Julie, what's the status in you guys' state? Are you guys home rule or?
Here in Minnesota, it's the same. The local authorities have had wide discretion on what on their maintenance, and but here in Minnesota, the DOT, I have jurisdiction over all of the public grade crossings and jurisdiction over the level of warning of those.
Oh,
But
interesting.
the local road authorities maintain their specific entities, their approaches, and their striping.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's the same here with Georgia. The locals maintain. We do, um, if we ever go out, we do survey all public crossings, and if we do ever see issues, we make recommendations to the whoever's in charge, and we've seen really good results with our recommendations. But they are in charge of their maintenance.
Gotcha. Yeah, Rich, anything to add to that from the railroad perspective?
Yeah, really a mixed bag from my experience. Whether the state has a sophisticated rail office or a PUC, or how much ownership the state DOT itself takes. I'll say personally, I don't think there's anything more important than the relationship between a state DOT and local governments when it comes to grade crossing work. So a lot of state DOTs recognize their role, holders of the purse strings for the Section 130 dollars and things, send out solicitation letters. But when it comes to the discretionary funding versus the formulaic side with the Section 130 program, at a state level, and with larger cities, you have resources. But when you get down to the smaller local or rural level, there are some that have never benefited from a dollar of federal money because they don't know how to get it done. That's where the state can step up and help local roads, smaller communities, and where BNSF is putting our resources with a dedicated internal team around grant support that some of you are probably familiar with.
Excellent. No, thanks for that. Open it back up, see if anybody else has questions that they've thought of since last time. Another one that I kind of thought of, Jason, you talked a lot about it, and I think everybody touched on it at least one point or another. Grade separations obviously are something that we all want to do, and which you were just talking about helping small communities get them. How important do we all kind of view the FLA's program that they just did with that, the crossing elimination program? I think obviously it looks pretty important. I don't know if there's anything else anybody wants to discuss with that specifically. And B, what are some of kind of the alternatives, some of the obstacles that you might run into where you say, hey, we'd love to put a grade cross or a grade separation here, but it's just not something we can do for whatever happens, whatever reasons. There's sometimes obstacles I know that pop up there. So I'll open that one up to the floor. Anybody can take that one.
I'll unmute here and talk for a little bit. Grade separations, generally we leave grade separations to our districts within MnDOT to kind of identify and program and seek out funding for. We used to do it more centrally, where our office would kind of keep a list of grade separations. But we ran into a lot of issues with just estimation. I don't estimate the cost of bridges and things like that. And I'm not gonna be the one who's designing and constructing and managing all of that, the aspects of that. So we made a decision a few years back to house that kind of stuff with the local district office and support them however we can in, if they're looking for suggestions or any kind of support, technical support that they would need. But the majority of that falls to our district in MnDOT.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I can answer for Ohio, though I don't manage the program. So I'll do my best to explain it. But the last state budget in Ohio, the governor established what we call our grade crossing elimination program. So it was really maybe the way to put it is kind of like seed money for grade separation studies and projects. So essentially it was, a big call for projects for all of our local partners to essentially submit applications for a potential project, and our state funding could do things like kind of planning level studies or feasibility studies. And the overall intent was to essentially provide the state match, really to prep the project for the federal program from a kind of planning standpoint, but also provide matching funds for further design and construction of the project should it be awarded. So we've been fairly successful with that. It's opened up a lot of opportunities that without that kind of state level program that would have put a lot of the federal money out of reach. So it's been a big benefit for us.
Excellent. Thank you.
So from Georgia, most of our grade separation initiatives have not come because of a crash history, except the two ones that I mentioned. It's more of a blocked crossing issue that triggers a lot of those in Georgia, and we've got several of those in the works that have been initiated by different groups. In fact, we've done a statewide study to help us prioritize for block crossing locations. And one thing we're doing with our group, I think the Section 130, we've been able to do some scoping projects to help us identify a solution if it might be a grade separation. At least get to that point where we have something that can be applied for with a grant, even though we don't have the money to actually build a grade separation. We try to define the most practical solution and what the cost is, and then figure out how to deliver that.
Gotcha. We will do one last call for questions. We're getting close to the end of here. Not hearing or seeing any, I will give it right back over to Daniel to close us out.
Thanks, Tom. And again, thanks to everyone for your participation today. And thank you to our speakers. Really appreciate your presentations. A lot of excellent points on this very important topic, high incident grade crossings. A lot of good takeaways on solutions and best practices and noteworthy practices in the states. So again, really appreciate that. Again, this webinar has been recorded, and we are developing a white paper based on each installment of this webinar series, and also we'll share the slides. Bear with us. We are working on some IT solutions internally at AASHTO for sharing the recording. So just hopefully we'll have that for you early in the new year, and wish you all a happy and safe holiday season. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.